Hey guys, it's Charlene. Today I'm going to share with you 5 different ways that you can use your stencils other than coloring. So let's get started. For today's cards, I'm working with several items from Altenew. These are part of the brand new release. There you saw the Fruity Colors enamel dots as well as the Cute Fruits paper pack, the Mega Party Greeting stamp set and Mega Party die. There's also a trio of items called Zesty Life. So you have a stamp set, coordinating die, as well as stencil. And then there's the Citrus Fruits pattern layering stencil, as well as the Lemon Craze builder stencil set. For my first card, I'm going to be using that Lemon Craze builder stencil set. You can see it's a set of 3 stencils. I love the Altenew packaging because it always tells you exactly what you need. The first way you can use your stencils is dry embossing. Now keep in mind, everything I'm going to show you today you could do with any stencil set. It doesn't have to be a layering stencil, it just needs to be a stencil. Now most die cutting machines will do dry embossing, so just check and see what your sandwich is that you need for your particular machine. To do dry embossing on the Platinum 6, you put the stencil down, then you put your piece of cardstock, then you add the tan matte, and then you add the blue plate on top. I like to run my sandwich through my embossing machine several times. That just allows me to get a really good impression from the stencil. Essentially what's happening is that tan matte is allowing the stencil to push into the cardstock. So it's going to give you an impression. You can see there, it gave me an impression of the lemons. So I'm going to use my stencil here still in order to do my coloring. So that way when I'm all finished, those lemons will be colored, but they'll also be raised. So I'm coming in here with Mid Yellow, which is a beautiful yellow from Altenew. And you don't need a ton of colors either when you are doing any kind of stenciling. If you don't have multiple shades of yellow and you want to do shading, that's totally okay. You're going to see what I do here is I go in and I color all of my lemons, and now I'm coming back with a smaller brush and I'm gonna add my shading in. So I'm just bringing some more of that yellow along the bottom and kind of towards the right of the lemons, so that way it's a little bit darker in color there and it just makes them look a little bit more 3D. Altenew calls this set a builder stencil set because essentially each layer of the stencil is going to give you a different area of that pattern of the lemons with their leaves and everything. So keep that in mind when you're trying to decide which one you want to use for your dry embossing. If you have a stencil set, you're going to have to kind of pick and choose because you can't also now run this through your embossing machine because then it would flatten the areas that you had already done. So for my leaves, I came in with some Forest Glades for the base color, and then I did use some Evergreen to add a little bit of shading on the leaves. But like I said before, you absolutely could just use the same color in order to add the shading in there. I'm using pretty traditional colors to color in this stencil, but you could make these lemons pretty much any color you want. Just remember that when you're picking out colors, you don't have to make everything true to life. You could make your lemons pink and have orange leaves. I mean, whatever you want, and it would look great, I'm sure. Actually, now I'm wanting to make a card with pink lemons, kind of a play on pink lemonade. So for shading, I suggest that you use a smaller brush. Here I am using the mini ink blending brushes. For the larger areas, I'm using the small ink blending brushes from Altenew. And if there's areas I need to get into, and you'll see this later, I'm using the Altenew detailed brushes. So the smaller the brush you have, the more detail you're going to be able to create with it. So I definitely recommend looking into having different size brushes in order to accomplish that kind of fun shaded look that you can get. So there's my leaves. And now for this next layer, this is actually kind of a little accent layer, and you could do lots of fun stuff with this. I'll show you later things that I like to do with the accent layers. But for this one, I'm keeping it pretty simple. I'm just coming back in with that mid yellow for the areas on the lemons. And then there's some areas around the card where you can see there's kind of like 3 little dots in lots of different sections. I'm actually going to come in with pool here, and I'm going to color those dots. So I think that pop of that nice teal color is going to go really well with the yellow and the green. And it doesn't take much. The other benefit of using the mini ink blending brushes here is that you don't have to worry too much about it getting into other spaces. I like to just take a little piece of scrap paper and kind of set it over the area that I don't want to get any ink on. The second way that you can use your stencils is with glitter sprays. So this is silver glitter dust from ThermoWeb, and all I did was put back that original stencil that I had that we used to color the lemons, and now I'm spraying over the entire stencil with that glitter dust. I do recommend using some kind of paper box in order to do the spraying, so that way you don't get the glitter all over your desk. And also you are going to want to clean your stencil just with some soap and water, or you can use some rubbing alcohol. But it doesn't make very much of a mess at all, yet it creates this beautiful shimmery glittery look to whatever you have sprayed it on. I love that stuff. For my greeting, I'm using the Mega Party Greetings stamp set as well as the Mega Party die. So you can see there that big stamp that says party. Essentially the die is the same exact size as that. So you can use the die if you want to make a die cut of the word party, and then you can still use all of the little kind of sub-sentiments from the stamp set with the die. I think it's a really nice add-on to have that one die and yet have all of the other parts of the stamp set that work with it. So I'm going to heat emboss in white on black cardstock here, my little sub part of this sentiment. So it says to the life of the, and then we're going to have that party word die. It's going to look really nice on the front of the card. So first I put some anti-static powder down, then I stamped with some embossing ink, and now I'm just heat embossing that white embossing powder onto the black cardstock. And then I'm just going to trim it with my paper trimmer off camera to get a nice little rectangle. For the party die itself, I am layering this up. I think I layered up 3 that I cut out. That's just going to give me some more dimension on the front of the card. It'll really make this word die stand out. And when you're layering them up, all you need to do is kind of start from one end, get it all nice and straight and lined up, and then you can work your way across the word, just pinching as you go along. So here's a trick if you don't want to use colored cardstock, but you do want to have a colored background edge behind your card panel. You can just pick an ink color that you used on your card and go ahead and blend it around the edges of a piece of cardstock. So I glued that down to my card base, and now I'm going to glue on top the pretty lemon piece that we did that I've cut down so that it'll show that nice border. So the pool border is picking up the pool dots that we did with the pool die ink. Now I can glue my word die on there, and I'm just making sure I don't get glue everywhere. I kind of had a little glue decide to run away there. But now I'm going to glue it right across that bottom third. That's a great place to put large sentiments. And then I'm going to nestle in that to the life of the sub sentiment on there. And I did add a little bit of foam tape to the back of that just to have it pop off the card. So there is our finished first card. We have those lovely raised lemons and the glitter on them. It looks so good in person. Now I'm going to be using for my second card the Zesty Life stamp set. Again, you can see that beautiful work that Altenew does on their packaging. I love it. And I'm going to use my jet black dye ink here, and I'm going to stamp out both parts of the lemon branches. So this set comes with that smaller lemon branch with the lemon that I am inking up now. And then it also has a larger piece. So depending on how much you want on the front of your card, you could do both of them. You could just do one of them. You could do multiples of them. It just kind of depends on what you're going for. I wanted quite a few lemons on my card, so I decided to go ahead and stamp both of them out here. And the jet black ink works really well for all kinds of different things. It works well for Copic coloring, and it also works well for ink blending when you're using a coordinating stencil set like this. So this is the Zesty Life stencil set. It's 2 stencils, and it just makes the process of coloring in all of the different images really easy. So I'm starting out here with some forest glades to do the leaves, and then again I'm going to bring in some evergreen to go ahead and add some shading. And then for my lemons, I'm going to be using that same mid yellow again as well in order to color the lemons in. So I use that same process where I also use the yellow to create my shading on the lemons. And now we are going to get into the third fun way you can use your stencils, which is for heat embossing. So there's a couple of different ways that you can get your embossing ink onto your cardstock. I'm using a paper pouncer here, but you also could use a foam dauber, or you could even use the entire embossing ink pad and kind of smush it over the areas of the stencil that you want the embossing ink to go through. Now, I do recommend before you do this that you go ahead and use some anti-static powder over the entire image, so that way you're not going to have any of your embossing powder sticking in areas you don't want it to. But you can see I put the stencil down. I went ahead and used my paper pouncer in order to smush my embossing ink in on those areas. And now I'm covering the lemons with clear embossing powder. So this is going to create a really fun 3-dimensional shiny kind of outcome with your cards. And the nice thing is you can do this as many times as you want. So I repeated this process 3 times. It did not take very long at all. When I was finished though, all of my lemons were beautiful and raised and shiny, and I did leave the leaves alone. So you can see you have that juxtaposition between the gorgeous shiny lemons and then your original style of the leaves. And now I'm using the Cute Fruits paper pack for my background. You can see it has all of these beautiful fruit patterns, so bright and fun, and it has these great colors. I just love this paper pack. I chose this piece of paper that kind of reminds me of cake sprinkles, and I loved the colors in it, so I cut it down so that there's about 1.5 inches at the bottom of my card. And this is a great way to go ahead and stamp a sentiment on your card when you're using patterned paper. You just leave a strip at the bottom that's just the plain white cardstock, or you can leave a strip on the side that's plain white cardstock and then go ahead and stamp your sentiment in there. The sentiment I chose is from that same Zesty Life stamp set. And now you can see I cut out 2 extra of each die cut of the lemon branches, and I'm just gluing them all together. This is going to give my lemons a little bit of dimension on the front of my card. And now I can go ahead and glue both of the branches down to my card here. I wanted the leaves to get kind of close down to the sentiment without covering anything up. And then I'm going to put my smaller of the lemon branches up in that right hand corner. And so now we have kind of a triangle formation. So you've got the sentiment and then the 2 lemon branches in a triangle shape, which is just very pleasing to the eye. So when you're trying to create any kind of triangle trio on your card, remember that you can include the sentiment as a part of that trio. So that'll help you to balance your cards so that they are more visually appealing. Once I get everything done on there, I'm just gluing the whole card front to a card base. And now I'm going to be using some of the Fruity Colors enamel dots. These are awesome. I love these colors. They coordinate great with the paper pack and everything else from this release. So I've picked some blue and pink ones and a yellow one, and I added a strip of that pattern paper on the inside as well. For my third card, I'm using the Citrus Fruits Pattern Layering Stencil Set. There are 4 stencils in this set. I love when there's lots of different layers because that gives you the opportunity to do lots of fun things with your stencils. And that brings me to the 4th way that you can use your stencils, and that is with spray stains. So I have the Twisted Citron Distress Spray Stain here, and I'm using it to spray through that first layer of my stencil, and that's going to create my leaves. Now these spray stains, they are a lot of fun. They give you a really interesting look on your cards. For my next layer here, which has the oranges and lemons, you can see I masked off the lemons, and I used some Distress Mica stain, which is flickering candle, and I used that for the oranges. So now I cleaned off my stencil off camera. I just went and rinsed it with some warm water and dried it with a lint-free towel. I like to use flour sack towels for that. They work great. So that way I could come in and color all of the lemon pieces with the mid-yellow ink. And I'm actually going to darken up my oranges. This is something that you can do. You can ink blend over distress sprays, and it's going to alter the color of the spray. I just used a little bit of spiced marmalade, and that darkened up the oranges to the color that I wanted them. Now for the tops of the glasses, I'm coming in here with a light blue ink. This is Tumbled Glass Distress ink. And I can take that layer off and then put my next layer, which is going to fill in the glasses as well as create the darker areas so that it looks like the oranges and lemons have slices. So for my glasses, I did some in mid-yellow, I did some in spiced marmalade so that you've got lemonade and orange juice all over the front of this card front. And then I again used the spiced marmalade over the tops of my oranges, a little more heavy-handed this time in order to make it nice and dark. And I used the mid-yellow over my lemon slices to get those areas nice and dark as well. So I mentioned earlier detail layers of layering stencils. So I'm using the detail layer here, and this is the 5th way that you can use your stencils. You can use them with pastes or glazes. I'm using some Paper Glaze Luxe here, which is this opaque white sparkly glaze, and it looks awesome. Got it on the detail layer here, and it creates these little pops of glittery goodness that are textured. I just love it. That top layer does the straws as well as some ice cube looking kind of accents around on the card front. For my sentiment, I'm again using the Mega Party die here, only I'm not going to color the whole thing. I'm doing some ink blending, but I'm doing kind of an ombre fade. So I'm ink blending really dark towards the bottom of the word die cut, and then I'm getting lighter and lighter with how much ink I'm putting down and leaving it white at the top. For my little sub-sentiment area, I'm actually going to stamp that out in the same color that I used to ink blend the Mega Party word die. I'm using Pool for both of those. And I'm just going to cut that out with my paper trimmer and cut it down to a nice little rectangle. Now, there is a lot going on this card front, that beautiful citrus pattern, all of the texture paste, everything, the mica sprays that we put on there. So I am going to put a little piece of vellum along kind of towards the bottom third of the card in order to create kind of a safe zone to put my sentiment. So this is a great way if your sentiment is getting lost on a very busy card. It's a great way to kind of create a zone for it where it's not going to get lost. And you just do that by adding a little strip of vellum. And I use some of the awesome Altenew foam tape on the back of my card panel. And I'm just going to go ahead and get it onto my card base here. I like to kind of fold back a third of the release tape, get it centered, press it down, flip it over, and then I can remove the rest of the release tape. So now you see that safe zone I have there. I've put the little sub-sentiment down there just so I can get an idea for placement before I go ahead and glue down my Mega Party word die over the vellum. And now I am going to pop up that sub-sentiment with a little bit of foam tape. And so my card says, "Party like you mean it." I love that so much. Look at those cool sprays and textures. Oh, I love how this card turned out. I think it was my favorite. So going back over the ways we did dry embossing, we did glitter sprays, we did heat embossing with clear embossing powder, but you could use glitter embossing powder, you could use colored embossing powder. We did distress sprays, and then we also did texture paste in order to create that awesome third card. Be sure to check the description box below so you guys can find out about the cool giveaway. This video is part of the August 2023 release video hop for Altenew. All the details are down in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that I can continue bringing you more crafty content in the future. Until next time, happy crafting.